Hey everybody, Coach Toolshed here, and in today's video I'm going to be bringing you my review for Far Cry 6. And as with all reviews here on Coach Toolshed Gaming, you can rest assured that I have taken the time to fully beat the game before posting my review. In the case of Far Cry 6, I have gotten the Platinum Trophy for the game playing on a PS5, which means I've done pretty much everything that the game has to offer. So now, without further ado, I'm going to jump right into my review for Far Cry 6. Now, the first thing I want to discuss is where I'm coming from in regards to the Far Cry franchise. I have played almost all of the games in the series. I didn't play the first game, but I've played all of the other numbered entries, and I've played the spin-offs such as Blood Dragon, Primal, and most recently Far Cry New Dawn. Now, I have enjoyed most of these titles. I hated New Dawn. I did not enjoy the DLC for Far Cry 5 whatsoever. In fact, that was the reason why I've stopped to buy season passes altogether, was because of Far Cry 5, if you go back and check out my review from that a couple of years back. But I have enjoyed most of the numbered entries from the game, and I really liked Far Cry Blood Dragon. I thought it was one of the better standalone DLCs that I've ever played, to be quite honest. However, when I was playing Far Cry 6, throughout the first half of the game especially, I couldn't come to any other realization except that I was just kind of bored playing it. I didn't really understand why, and so I was thinking to myself, what is the difference here? Why am I not enjoying this like I have some of the other games? Is it because I'm sick of the repetition, or they haven't expanded the franchise out? And that's not the case. I came to the realization, finally, that the problem with Far Cry 6 is that it's not a lateral move, it's not a sidestep for the franchise, it's not that they're not doing anything different or new. The real problem is that Far Cry 6 actively takes steps backwards and is worse in several regards from what we have seen in previous numbered entries for the franchise. The AI in this game is horrendous. The worst I've seen in a AAA game in a very long time. A lot of talk went into the AI being a problem in a recent game that I reviewed, Deathloop, which came out last month. That game had pretty bad AI. The AI in Far Cry 6 is infinitely worse. They are completely brain dead. You can walk up to any enemy in the game and just melee kill them, and they won't even be alerted half the time. It is awful, the AI in this game. The AI mapping for the NPC characters is also ridiculous. We're going to see some clips of that interspersed throughout the game, of people just driving their cars into walls, into other NPCs. It's ridiculous. And the enemies in the game are no threat whatsoever. There's only 2 difficulty modes, and I played on the, quote, hardest difficulty, action mode, which is supposed to represent, quote, the classic Far Cry experience, except it doesn't whatsoever. If you go back and play previous entries in this series, starting with, say, Far Cry 2, Far Cry 3, go back and check those out, and you'll see that the AI in those games is much more difficult to deal with than it is in this game. The enemies actually become alerted. They will attack you. They can actually kill you. The amount of times I actually died in Far Cry 6 was almost exclusively from me falling off of something and dying, or some sort of explosion that I wasn't ready for, where maybe a rocket caught me off guard, or a vehicle exploded, something like that. Almost all of my deaths in the game were from an accident, not from the enemies, because the enemies in this game, again, are totally useless. Awful in every way. This is by far the easiest first-person shooter that I have played that I can remember. I can't think of any game that's easier than Far Cry 6 for a shooter. It's ridiculously bad. They already delayed the game for several months, and I think they needed to delay it for several months more just to work on the awful AI that is in Far Cry 6. And if you've ever played some of the other games, you would know that one of the fun things that the games can provide is the emergent gameplay. I remember still distinctly times that I was playing back in Far Cry 3 where a patrol would be coming down the road, and I'd be trying to get out of their way so they didn't notice me, and they'd see me, and they'd jump out of their Jeep and start attacking me, and I'd start running into the jungle, and a tiger would come after me, and all of a sudden I have to get away from the tiger and the guards, so I jump into a river, and a crocodile grabs me, and I gotta get away from the crocodile, and then I jump out of the river, and oh, here comes the tiger still looping around trying to get me. Here's another group of guards coming in because they've called in reinforcements, and now I'm in a pickle, and I gotta try to get out of it, and it's hectic, and it's frantic, and you have to fight to survive. Nothing like this happened to me the entire time I played Far Cry 6. The emergent gameplay in this game, the wildlife, it might as well not even exist. The amount of times I got attacked by an animal in the game, pretty much non-existent. A couple of scratches here and there, and if you even attempt to engage the animals in combat, they will run away. It's ridiculously bad, the emergent gameplay. I cannot tell you one single time in this game where anything interesting happened to me that wasn't scripted. It's abysmally bad. That was one of the hallmarks of the franchise, was the crazy things that could happen to you that were unique to your gameplay, because you would be the only person that would experience things the exact way that I did, because of all the emergent gameplay that would be happening around you. It's just non-existent in Far Cry 6. This all ties in to the AI. I cannot overstate how bad it is in Far Cry 6, but if you just watch the video, you will see clip after clip after clip of me just nonchalantly walking up to guards and just melee killing them while they do almost no damage to me, and in some cases don't even become alerted even as I'm killing people right in front of their face. You can walk directly up to them, facing them, and just stab them. It is awful. Oh, I gotta move on. I'm getting worked up just thinking about how horrible the programming was in this game. Now, let's take a look at something where they actually did improve greatly. And I would even say that other game developers should take note of this game in this one regard and try to use this in their own games. And that is when you're trying to write a villain. Giancarlo Esposito has been talked about a lot as being the main villain in this game. Anton Castillo. You've seen him in all the promotional material, bunch of commercials that they cut for the guy, and I was a little bit worried, quite frankly, after what we saw last year with the game. Oh, what was it called? Cyberpunk 2077, I think, had a big name actor that they completely wasted. Yeah, I will say this. In Far Cry 6, Giancarlo Esposito is not wasted whatsoever. He gives a fantastic performance, and it's not just him on the screen that is excellent. The writing for his character is also very good. The scenes that he is in with him and his son and you, the protagonist, whoever else, they're all very good scenes. I was shocked. It was actually very good writing. The character has proper motivation. I know, shocking. They took the time to write a villain with real motivation that made sense. It's astounding. There was a twist at the end that I wasn't expecting. It was amazing. Unfortunately, the rest of the writing and the rest of the characters in the game, for the most part, are awful. You play as a main character named Danny. You can play as either a male or a female protagonist, and you are on the fictional island of Yara, which is supposed to be representative of modern-day Cuba. And you are part of a guerrilla group who is going to be trying to have a revolution and overthrow Anton Castillo, the dictator of the island. The problem is, the groups that you have to deal with, 2 out of the 3 groups are completely idiotic. People that I would not want to have any part of if I actually was going to be having a revolution and putting together an army. Especially, there's one group in particular where there is not a single redeeming character in the entire group. They're a group that you can't rely on. They're a group that isn't trustworthy. And your main goal on their story arc makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. Their big goal is to throw a concert, because we all know when you're going to have a bloody revolution, throwing a rap concert is one of the key things that you need to set up and do, right? And there's only one of the rebel groups that you join up with which makes any sense whatsoever, even though it's a little bit tropey. You have a group of farmers that are turned into a group of guerrillas that you have to work with and try to turn into a fighting group, you know? Even though you don't really do it in the game, that's how the story is presented, like they're improving over time. It doesn't actually happen in the story, but at least that group is salvageable from a theoretical standpoint. It makes sense. The other group, the third group, well, they're fun. They're basically just Watch Dogs 2 rejects. It's a bunch of 20-something computer whizzes who are also, bloody revolutionaries because, those tie in real well together. Those tech kids, they're really big into firearms and everything, right? So the issue is that 2 out of the 3 groups I can't stand. I want nothing to do with. I would not have them joining my group as part of a revolution. But you have to invest hours after hours after hours getting them to join your side so you can actually go through and finish the game. None of these characters from these groups are interesting the way that they are with the main villains. It's just the facts. I couldn't stand these characters. They are obnoxious. They're annoying. They're infighting with one another constantly. They don't gel together. There's one of the groups merges together with another group at one point, and it doesn't make any cohesive sense. It's just an absolute mess. Throw in the fact that the game just randomly starts talking about various political issues and social issues such as fracking, veganism, the Canadian treatment of the indigenous people. It's all over the place with just nonsense. And it's bizarre because you already have a very rich background here that you could use for the revolution. There's plenty of political stuff you can mine just from that without going off on these random tangents here and there in the game. It makes absolutely no sense. It doesn't fit tonally with the game. And this is another issue that we're going to get into in just a little bit. But the problem is again, to get through the story, to get through the game, you're going to be sitting through about 25% of really good cutscenes and 75% of some of the worst characters that you are going to find in a game this year. Now, tonally, again, Far Cry has always gone back and forth between being sort of an explosive, open world game where you're just going to go around and blow stuff up, and then it'll take something seriously, and then there's also going to be some wacky stuff over here. But in Far Cry 6, the difference between the two tones has never been more stark. When you're talking about Anton Castillo and what his group of soldiers will do, we're talking about human trafficking, slavery, human experimentation, mass graves, just all sorts of really dark stuff that fits into the world, fits into the background of the game. Yes. But then you'll also be running around with a rooster that attacks people, that has a mohawk and earrings and all these weird colorations that will jump at enemies and attack them in this most bizarre manner. And then you'll have missions where you're just going to have a big party. We're going to have some fireworks. We're going to throw some food on the grill and all this stuff. And then you're going to have cockfighting where it's set up like a Tekken match where you select your fighter and you go in and you have these cockfighting matches. And it's just... it doesn't really fit. It doesn't jive. You have, again, something that Ubisoft has been relying on in all of their franchises over the past few years. You have multiple scenes where you as the main character go out and get drunk with other NPCs and end up vomiting. And that's a mission. But they don't just have one of those. They have another one. And then another one. I haven't seen it this bad except for Assassin's Creed Valhalla, to be honest. In that game, they did it like a dozen different times. But in this game, again, they're just using the same things over and over again. It's like, okay, I get it. We're going to go have some cervezas, and we're going to get drunk, and then my character's going to puke, and then wake up, and then give me another mission. It just doesn't fit. Stick with one tone. The humor in this game does not hit the mark whatsoever. I mean, when you're talking about, on one hand, you're going to see a scene where one of your friendly characters is going to die from a nerve gas attack and be bleeding out from their eyes and their nose and their mouth and everywhere and just dying right in front of you. And then the next scene, you're running around with a little dog on wheels who's yipping at people, and you say, "Go chorizo, get them!" It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And I know, once again, the tonal fluctuation has always been part of the franchise. It's never been more ridiculously apparent than it is in Far Cry 6. I did not enjoy that aspect of it whatsoever. If you want to take the game seriously, okay, you certainly have serious story matter here that you're diving into. Stick with that. Don't hop back and forth. It's just stupid. It doesn't fit in this particular game. Now, we've talked enough about the story and the writing. Let's get into some of the actual gameplay mechanics, because here's another issue that I have with the game. One of the more annoying trends that I've noticed over the past couple of years with first-person shooters has been this odd system that these games keep employing where you have to use a specific type of ammo to deal with a specific type of enemy. Now, this might make sense in some settings, but when you're talking about human enemies exclusively, it really doesn't make sense that you'd want me to have 5 different types of ammo carrying around so I can deal with each different type of them like it's rock, paper, scissors. You need a type of ammo to take out vehicles. You need a type of ammo to take out guards that don't have any armor. You need another type for enemies with armor. You need another type for enemies that have poison tanks on their back. It's pointless. And you want to know what? By the time I got halfway through the game, I realized all you really need is one weapon that you can take down vehicles with, so you just put blasting rounds onto one of your weapons, you're fine. Then you just put armor piercing onto all the rest and aim for the head. That's really all you got to do. Mixing and matching all these different ammo types, it's really obnoxious, it's really annoying. I wish developers would stop doing it. Unfortunately, it seems to be getting more and more popular, and as it's just a way for the developers to not put more work into actually developing their AI. They just turn them into bullet sponges if you're not using the right type of ammo. It's not fun. It's not enjoyable to have to be theoretically switching between 4 different weapons every time you go into an enemy base, just in order to take out specific enemies. Now, again, the way around this, just use the armor-piercing rounds. It works on all of them. Go for it. Just aim for the head. Most of the time, it'll be a one-shot kill. The other issue with the game that I've seen people talking about, it did not affect me, is that you might run into a situation where you're under-leveled for certain areas. Now, if you just go through the game with a natural progression, I did not have any problem whatsoever leveling up in accordance with the areas I was going into. I was never under-leveled at all. And I wasn't going out and grinding stuff or doing anything out of the ordinary. I was just taking over bases as they came to me, taking over checkpoints as they came to me. I wasn't going out of my way to grind my level up whatsoever. But the game definitely has a system where your character levels up, and then as you complete main story missions, over time, the game areas will level up with your progression of the story. And theoretically, the enemies are supposed to get harder. I never found that to be the case. I didn't notice any difference from the start of the game to the end of the game when it came to the difficulty of the enemies, because again, they're all brain dead. And it really is a shame because the actual gunplay mechanics of the game feel a lot better than they did in previous games. I even went back to Far Cry 3 to compare the two, and it definitely, the aiming, the fluidity of everything is better in Far Cry 6 as compared to previous games. The problem is that because the enemies present no challenge whatsoever, it's wasted. The mechanics of the game are mostly wasted. I didn't really have to use anything out of the ordinary. I never had to think about what I was doing. It got to the point where I was just walking up to every enemy and just stabbing them all and just ending the mission. The checkpoints, the outposts in the game, very simple to take over. That used to be one of the prime selling points in Far Cry 6, was the time you take to take over all the outposts in the game. And you'd have to do some thinking and some scouting and planning on how you're going to go about doing it without them setting off the alarms and calling in a bunch of reinforcements. In this game, I didn't even have to worry about it. Most of the time, without trying, they didn't even notice me. And I was able to take out the whole base without raising an alarm. When I did try, almost never was an alarm set off. And even if they do set off an alarm and call in reinforcements, again, it doesn't matter. You just have to take out a few more enemies. It's not a challenge. In the last few numbered entries, you would have some frantic gunfights. You'd be running around for your life. Never happened in this game. Never. Once again, the only time where I ran into issues is if I accidentally ran into some sort of an explosion or an enemy randomly caught me with a rocket launcher, which can happen. And in some cases, actually, later on in the game, when you're in the main city, there was one time where every single enemy just had a rocket launcher and they're just all running around blasting you with rockets, and it just doesn't make too much sense. You're running around in a city and all of the guards are just firing rockets everywhere? Are you not going to destroy the entire city doing that? Again, makes no sense. I know it's just a game, but stuff like this really bothered me. Another issue, something that got complained about all the time in a game we saw last year, Cyberpunk 2077, is that the city wasn't populated with NPCs. Well, when you're driving around in Esperanza, occasionally you might see people around, but for the most part the streets are entirely 100% empty aside from the guards. There's nobody walking around. There's nobody at the market. There's nobody walking down the street. There's no cars in the street. They're just completely empty. And you can even see in certain times of the game, you can watch when you're dropping in on a parachute, you can see the cars spawning in front of you. And this happens all the time. One of the things the game added in to sort of slow down your progress a little bit is these things called checkpoints, which are basically roadblocks in the road where they'll have a few armored guards that you have to take out, because if you try to drive through them while the checkpoint is up and in enemy hands while it's active, they're going to put out road spikes, which are going to blow out your tires, and you'll have to find a new vehicle. So you don't want that to happen. So you just stop, take out the checkpoint. Again, takes about 2 seconds and zero thought. But they're everywhere. They're all over the map. When you take them out, however, you will often see enemy vehicles just spawning on top of one another, slamming into one another, blowing each other up. You'll see NPCs driving into walls, driving into other NPCs, walking in place right into a wall. It's a mess. The AI pathing is a mess. It's all just a mess with the spawns. The entire system, the underlying system of the game when it comes to AI is fundamentally broken in every single regard you can imagine. Another way they try to slow down your progression in the game is having these anti-aircraft sites scattered all over the map. Once again, you got to go take them out. They're very simple. It's very easy. It's not difficult at all. You just throw a stick of dynamite at them, blow them up, they're done. Simple, but they're everywhere, and you have to take them out if you want to fly anywhere on the island. Otherwise, they will shoot you down out of the sky. You can't take evasive maneuvers to avoid it. They will 100% kill you in the sky if you're not careful, if you don't take these things out. It's just gating the progress of the actual game. This game took me far longer to beat than any other of the Far Cry games. But there's not more content. Let me say that again. There is not more content. But you will be playing for a lot longer just because of having to take out all of these things, the checkpoints and the anti-aircraft sites that are slowing down your ability to traverse around the island. You can't do an airdrop in an area, for example, that's covered with an anti-aircraft site too. You can't even parachute down. They'll shoot you out of your parachute. It's ridiculous. They're everywhere. It's annoying, it's obnoxious, and since they're not a challenge to take out, I did not consider these to be worthwhile additions to the game whatsoever. The only purpose that they serve is to slow down your traversal. That is it. Not a good addition. One of the things I want to discuss as well is how you progress through the game as far as upgrading your character. You do not have a skill tree in this game like you do in previous Far Cry games. Pretty much everything is unlocked for your character right away. You don't have to upgrade melee kills to take out heavy armored targets, for example, or to chain melee kills together, or anything like that, like you would have had to do in previous games. The only way you can get a little bit of different skill set is by what outfit you equip. You'll have your typical face, shirt, gloves, shoes, pants type of setup, and each thing you equip can give you slightly different buffs. You might be able to run faster, or reload your gun faster, or move more quietly, stuff like that. I pretty much went all in on having my character be able to move a little bit faster because this map is pretty big, and sometimes you'll be on foot, you might not have a vehicle, and you're going to be doing a lot of running. So I just wanted to be as fast as I could to get from point A to point B as quickly as possible, because once again, without the emergent gameplay that was present in the other games, I have no reason to linger or see what else might happen, because nothing's going to happen. It's just an empty map with animals that run away from you, so you're not going to run into anything. Patrols on the road, you can run right past a patrol vehicle. They won't stop. They will barely notice you. If you stand still right in front of them, they might eventually become alerted, but you can feel free to just run across the road wherever. In previous games, you would actually have to worry about these because they would get out and engage with you in combat. Not in Far Cry 6. Again, problem with the AI, we've already discussed that. But as far as the progression goes, it's really just pretty much useless. Just a way to be like, oh, cool, I can change my outfit and it'll do this or that. Nothing's going to change really the way you play the game whatsoever. You're not going to have a drastically different character setup than what I'm going to have. And again, because any enemy group that you run into is going to have that rock, paper, scissors sort of setup where they're going to have this enemy does this damage, and this does this damage, and this does this damage. It makes no sense to, say, have an outfit that protects you against fire or against explosives, because you're always going to have one other enemy type that will be able to get at you another way. Now again, the enemies don't do much damage, so it's not really much of an issue anyway. Most of the time, I didn't really even worry about what I was wearing. When it comes to upgrading your weapons, we have another Ubisoft resource grind intact here in Far Cry 6. You are going to have to gather hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of different resource nodes that are in crates or boxes or chests sprung throughout the island. Pretty much any building you go into, any little village, you'll find them everywhere, all over the place. The problem is there's so few resources in each one of these little boxes. You might open a box and there'll be 2 pieces of metal, 3 pieces of metal, and then you go to your upgrade screen and you might need 120 pieces of metal to do your next upgrade. So do the math. You're going to have to be opening box after box after box after box after box just to do upgrades. Now at the start of the game, it's not that bad, but as you unlock the more higher level stuff, you're going to need so much of the stuff that it drags down the experience. It slows you down. Everything in this game is designed to slow down player progression. It's so annoying. And this is something that's been going on with the franchise for a while. It's something I complained about when I reviewed Far Cry New Dawn, and it's intact here. Now, I think it might actually be not so bad in one way. They don't connect you to the store every single time you go into your menu and look at your arsenal or go into a vendor like they did in the last couple of Far Cry games. They don't push you into their online Ubisoft store to try to sell you more resources. So at least the game did improve a little bit in that regard. It's not quite as in-your-face and obnoxious. The store's still there. You can access it from the menu, but it's not as glaring of an issue as it was in the last game especially. But, again, the progression system in the game is not good. The AI in the game is horrible. The story in the game, mostly bad, some really good. The characters in the game, almost all horrible, except for a couple. On the whole, if you're a Far Cry fan, I consider myself to be a fan of the franchise on the whole. I do not consider myself to be a fan of Far Cry 6. I did not enjoy much of the game until it got towards the end, where the storyline mainly was just focused on the main villain, Anton Castillo, and how you and your group were going to take them out. There was a couple of excellent scenes in the game, some of the best I've played all year, to be honest, and also some of the absolute worst I've seen in years. If you're going to go out and pick this game up, I would recommend at the very least wait a couple more weeks. We got Thanksgiving coming up right around the corner here in the US, and we know that that will lead to huge sales on the storefront when it comes to Black Friday, and I'm sure you'll be able to pick this game up for half price if you just wait a couple more weeks. If you're still interested in the game, I would suggest going down that route. Do not pay full price for this game. I don't know even if fans of other Far Cry games would enjoy it, because I know I did not. And the problem is that it could have been good. It could have been good, but they put too many roadblocks in the way to make it uninteresting. And again, some of the writing, oh boy, just awful. So anyway, that's it for me, Coach Toolshed. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. Please subscribe. If you want to stay in tune with the channel, head forward. And as always, keep it turned to 11.